How many of you saw the movie Rocky? Anybody here saw the movie Rocky? And some of you have missed it. Who's missed it? Who's never seen Rocky? You have never seen the movie Rocky. It's just the best movie ever. You know, in a couple of years, what year is this? This is 2013. It's just a couple of years, it's going to be having its 40th anniversary.
Yep.
Whoa.
Well, you know, there's like Rocky 2, Rocky 3, Rocky 7. I don't even remember how many there were, but it just went on forever and got, in my opinion, worse as they went. Because the standard is the original one, and you know, you just can't improve on it. Anyway, I just remember in one of the movies, Rocky's sitting on the side of the bed, and you know, he's rubbing his fingers through his hair, and he's saying, if I can just last 15 rounds, I think he said 15 rounds with the gym. Nobody's made it that long. If I can just do that, then I'll know I'm not a bum. I'll know I'm not a bum if I can last. That's the way you prove you're not a bum.
That was perfect.
Was that good? I told you I liked the movie.
If you talk that way, the whole rest of the...
Why don't you just go 15 rounds with them? I bet you can do that.
What?
That voice.
Absolutely.
Okay, that was pretty close. I think for some of us, we spend a lot of time, we spend a lot of our lives trying to prove we're not a bum. I'm not a bum. I'm worth something. I have some value. I'm not a bum. I'm going to keep saying that. I'm not a bum. And for some of us, we hear these voices in our head all the time that tells us we're a bum. You know, those voices say you're good for nothing. You're never going to amount to anything. And you know, after you hear that for 5 or 6 years, 10 or 15 years, 40 or 50 years, you start to believe it. You start to live like, I'm never going to be anything. I'm never going to amount to anything. I'm never going to accomplish anything. My whole life is going to be downhill. It's over. We just live our lives based on what somebody else thinks about us or looking for the approval of others in our whole life. And that's the giant we're going to look at. This week we're wrapping up our series, The Bigger They Are, looking at the life of David. And do you remember what the other giants were? Obviously, the first giant that David faced was Goliath. And the second one that Amber talked to us about was King Saul. King Saul was a giant in David's life, trying to keep him from accomplishing what God had for him. And the third one that Chris talked to us about last week, David was a giant in his own life. He really sabotaged himself lots of times. And he made some really stupid decisions that ended up costing him. But he always overcame. He was an overcomer. And even when he made a mistake, he was able to correct it because he always looked to the Lord. And with David, man, you know, I mean, that picture with the boxes last week was so good to me. You have one box over here, one little decision that seems so insignificant. I can get around it. But then you add to that one another one, and you add to that one another one, and eventually you've got a roadblock you just can't get around. You experience that?
Yes.
You know, I just keep making stupid decisions. I keep doing this wrong thing after this wrong thing, and I should have just turned around the first time. Well, today the giant in David's life that we're going to look at is the giant of having to have everyone else's approval. We're going to read from 2 Samuel 6. And I already told you ahead of time, David overcame every giant. There wasn't anything that he faced that he didn't overcome. So we know by the end of the story, when we get there, he's going to be an overcomer. Okay, so like Lisa said this morning, we don't have to be depressed about the process. We can rejoice in the middle of the process, knowing that there's victory at the end. Because the bigger they are, there you go, okay. You know what? I was thinking about that phrase because we use that a lot, right? The bigger they are, the harder they fall. We can be rocky. The bigger they are, the harder they fall, Adrian. But I was thinking about the harder they fall in a different way, because the way we use it is the bigger thud they make when they hit the ground, because they're coming down. The bigger they are, louder the sound's going to be when they come down. But I'm thinking it might mean something else too. The bigger they are, the harder it is to get them to fall.
Yeah.
The bigger they are, the harder it is to pull them down in your life. You let them get so big, then it's going to be hard for us to deal with that. So let's look at what David did. In chapter 6 of 2 Samuel, I'm going to read a few verses. We're going to start with verse 14. And it says, wearing a linen ephod, David was dancing before the Lord with all his might. Now remember, this is the king of Israel. Wearing a linen ephod, David was dancing before the Lord with all his might, while he and all of Israel were bringing up the ark of the Lord with shouts and the sound of trumpets. As the ark of the Lord was entering the city of David, Michal, David's wife and the daughter of Saul, watched him from a window. And when she saw King David leaping and dancing before the Lord, she despised him in her heart. And when David returned home, this is verse 20, when David returned home to bless his household, Michal, the daughter of Saul, came out to meet him and said, how the king of Israel has distinguished himself today, going around half naked in full view of the slave girls of his servants, as any vulgar fellow would. Note the sarcasm. Verse 21, David said to Michal, his wife, it was before the Lord who chose me rather than your father or anyone from his house when he appointed me ruler over the Lord's people Israel. I will celebrate before the Lord, and I'll become even more undignified than this. And I will be humiliated in my own eyes. But by these slave girls you spoke of, I'll be held in honor. Now, you notice that this giant of what somebody else thought, immediately David could deal with. Unlike, the lust of his eyes when he was on his rooftop looking at Bathsheba bathing, in her house next door. He didn't deal with that one. He had to go down this road and build up his blocks to his purpose in life. But this time, immediately, he deals with it. And I think there's a lesson we can learn, because sometimes the lust of the eyes isn't that big a deal for us. That might not be our issue. Maybe we're not always lusting after everything or every person we see. But maybe this one is a giant to us, and we don't deal with it as quickly as David did. We're always listening to what somebody else thinks about us, or what somebody else has to say to us, or how they put us down, or what their expectations are of us. But David had this just wasn't, it is a giant for many people. For David, this was something he could deal with quickly, just as quickly as Goliath. Let's take a little stone and a slingshot and deal with it now, at the beginning, instead of letting it build and build. Because I think that through the story we see some things. First of all, at the beginning of the story it says that he was wearing a linen ephod, which is like underwear. Okay, so you get the picture here. David, who was the king of Israel, was having a celebration. He was bringing the ark of God back to its rightful place because it had been hidden away forever. This is the same ark, not the one from Indiana Jones. But I'm sure it's long gone. But it's the same. It's the same one that they talked about in the story. But it is the same one that Moses made when he was bringing the children of Israel out of Egypt into the promised land. It's the one that they made in the wilderness. They had kept it for generations, and it was part of their worship. But eventually, it had gone into hiding. They had put it away. They didn't use it in their worship anymore. So now David was bringing it back to its rightful place in the center of their worship. And as he did it, it brought such joy to his heart that this is what he did. He took off his robe. He took off his royal robe. And just in his undergarment, he was dancing before the Lord. Now, this tells me something. That David didn't see that royal place that he had been given as anything he had achieved in himself. I don't need this to have a relationship with God. I don't have to be the king to have a relationship with God. I can be me in my underwear and have a relationship with God. I know you've been there. Some of you, your prayer closet is also called the shower.
Yep.
Some of your best praying times is just nothing between you and God at all. Well, that's where David was. He saw that to be the king in the first place was a favor from God. And you need to recognize this, that favor is a gift. It's not something that any person gives you. It's something that the Lord puts on you. It's something that it's something he offers to us, his favor. And when we come to this place, maybe like David was the king, I don't know that any of us ever going to be a king. But, you know, there is a celebrity status in our society that's equal to king. But it comes and goes. Have you noticed? You know any celebrities that their celebrity status has come and gone pretty quick? Can you think of anybody? Lindsay Lohan. You know, you love her to death. Look at her. She's in Freaky Friday. And we love her in Freaky Friday. And then a few years later, we start hating her because she has a rough life. And it's easy to hate on somebody when they're down. Or who else?
MC Hammer.
Oh, bless his heart. Can't touch this.
Don't stop there.
No, I will. I'll spare you. Hammer time. Well, nobody was bigger than MC Hammer at the time.
About 2.5.
And now, not too many people lower than MC Hammer on the popularity charts. Plenty of people. I mean, and then it seems to me like it's really easy for us to put somebody up, and they don't even have to do anything wrong. But next week we're going to hate them anyway, because look how high they are. They don't.
Right.
We got to bring them down because now they're too big. So we have to bring them down, and it doesn't matter who it is, you know. And for some people, you know, you vote for your favorite politician, and then they get in office, and then you want to tear them down and pull them out, and then other people, you know, it's just everywhere. It's everywhere in our society. It's not just out there, and it's not just with celebrities. It's in our homes. It's in our schools. I was thinking about the way some parents treat their children. You know, like they put some expectations on them that are just completely impossible. Like, you better not get an A minus. Or, and some kids are perfectly capable of making straight A's. I was not one of them. Well, I probably was one of those children. Fortunately, my mom and dad didn't have that expectation because it didn't happen. Because I didn't study for nothing. I didn't study for a test ever. And I could get by with decent grades. As long as I passed, I was happy. That was my school story. Because I was just glad to get out of there at the end of the day and to get out at the end of the year and to graduate at the end of the 12th grade. Let's skip a couple along the way so we can do this early. That was just my story through high school. Then I got to college, and I loved every minute of those 4 years. I loved college. I had a blast there. And man, I wished I had applied myself better when I was in high school so I could have done better in college. But you know, part of what made college so good was there was this girl I met like a couple of months after I got there. And what was so much fun about college was that I didn't study there either. I mean, curfew, you know, we had a curfew. So at the strike of whatever that hour was, I think it was 11 o'clock, that's when I went to my dorm every night. And then if I had a project to do the next day, I would do it between 11 o'clock and whatever time it got done. But, you know, there are some parents who, not just with grades, but with sports or with relationships or whatever, they put such expectations on the children that they crush them. I mean, there's nothing wrong to have high expectations for your child, but some parents are doing it because they messed up their own life, and now they want their kids to live out their own dream. I want you to do good because I was wrong. I could have done that with my kids. I could say, okay, you better get straight A's because I was a bum. I want to prove I'm not a bum. I want to prove I'm not a bum, so you do good in school. Don't make me look bad. Or don't come to me with this problem, because don't you ever come in this house pregnant, young lady. You know, and while that's a good goal, if that happens, then what does that do to the child? If there's an issue in their life, who are they going to come to? Don't you want them, parents? Don't you want your kids to come to you when they have issues? So don't close the door with such high expectations that you crush the child's spirit and close the door to them having a relationship with you when they need you most. David's identity wasn't in the kingly robe. It was who he was underneath, on the inside, that made David who he was, and that gave him a relationship with the Lord. So there he was in his underwear, and it says he was dancing before the Lord with all of his might. And one of the ways that we can overcome this fear of what everybody else says, and let me just go back and say this about the expectations from other people and from parents or whoever it is. Remember that favor and the promotion comes from the Lord. Parents, you can't make your child succeed. Kids, your parents can't do the succeeding for you. This is something that you have to work out between you and God in your own decisions that you make. Make sure you're not piling up bad decisions so that you're headed in the wrong direction, and let's head in the direction that God wants us to be. James 1:17 says that every good and perfect gift comes down from the Father. Every good and perfect gift that we receive comes from God himself. And then when he was dancing before the Lord, I think this is really important for us to get away from the giant of approval of others, and that is to have a right relationship with God. That we individually, ourselves, have a relationship with God, and we focus on that one. And I'm talking about when you hear those voices that are speaking condemnation, or the voices that are telling you you're never going to amount to anything or nothing good's ever going to happen to you, whether you're 15 or 65, it doesn't matter. Whenever you hear those voices, if you turn your focus toward your relationship with God and hear what he has to say about you, what his plan is for you, what he has in store for your life, it's going to be good. David, I think in this moment of celebrating, he didn't even know anybody else was around. You know, he didn't know his wife was looking out the window at him, and he didn't care. What he knew was, I have a relationship with God. I'm in the middle of what God called me to do, and I'm going to have a party doing it. It's just celebration time. I'm going to enjoy this. And so there goes the kingly robe, and here I go. I'm about to break out into hammer time. I mean, it's going down right here in the middle of the street in front of everybody. But expecting man to approve of your relationship with God, or who you are, or who your character is, and always looking, I hope they're happy with the way. You know, I already told you I don't care. Because I live in such freedom in my relationship with God that I really don't care too much about what other people think. You know, I don't live for the approval of man. I live my relationship with God in such a way that if he approves of me, then I'm happy. I'm set. That doesn't mean I want to make everybody mad at me. I try not to do that, but I'm not going to go around being a man pleaser when it costs me being a pleaser of God. So I want to be pleasing to him, and expecting man's approval will turn you away from your relationship with God, and it will This is what happens. My relationship, can I kind of demonstrate this for you? My relationship with God is open. It's God and me. It's the two of us. And when I need your approval or any man's approval, my attention turns from him toward you.
Yes.
My attention turns toward you. And eventually, I'm like a plant, you know? The plant needs the sun, right? And the sun's here, the plant grows toward the sun. And this is the way I am. But if you're my sunshine, I'm bending toward you. And here I go. Everything I do is toward you. Oh, bless you, Holy Chris. and I begin to turn toward man. And what does man want? And then what happens? I can see God. He's there. We're still good. But I'm not fully aware of him in my life. I'm not fully living out what he's called me to be because I'm bent toward somebody else instead of toward him. And you know what happens eventually? It becomes inward. And you stop focusing even on the person because it's got to be everybody. So in order for it to be everybody, I'm always looking at myself. I got a navel gaze for a while. And then I'm looking like this. Now where's God? I can't even see him. I know he's there. He's not going to leave me. He's right. Wherever up is, he's up there. But here I am always looking at me. Poor me. Man, I wish I could straighten up. I wish I could live my life upright to where everything was free and open with God. But if I stand up just a little bit, that person's not going to like it. And if I'm not really aware of what this area of my life is like, that person's going to get mad at me. If I don't say yes to that person every time they ask me to do whatever it is, then here I am. I'm going to make somebody mad. So I'm just going to stay down here. And eventually, you're a 95-year-old person wishing you could stand up straight.
Right.
And you're only 22. It's so much better just to live your life to please God. Let other people's opinions go where they are. I'm not going to let that giant rule my life. I'm going to live my life for God. And I'm not going to bend toward anybody. I'm not going to bend toward myself. I'm going to live my life open. Psalm 78 is a scripture that talks about when Moses was bringing the children of Israel out of bondage into the promised land, out of Egypt. And this is a description of what they did. I wish I could breathe after I stand up. Verse 14 says that God guided them with a cloud by day and with a light from the fire at night. He split rocks in the wilderness and gave them water as abundant as the seas. He brought streams out of a rocky crag and made water flow down like rivers. But they continued to sin against him, rebelling in the wilderness against the Most High. Now, if you're going to go against the Most High, you're going somewhere else. Got that picture? They continued to rebel against the Most High. They willfully put God to the test by demanding the food they craved. They spoke against God and they said, can God really spread a table in the wilderness? After they ate the manna, after they got water from a rock, they said, can God really prepare a table in the wilderness? True, he struck the rock and water gushed out, streams flowed abundantly, but can he also give us bread? Can he supply meat for his people? And here we are knowing that we have this open relationship with God who wants to give us good things, and then there's this thing that somebody puts on us, this expectation that somebody comes and says, you ought to do this, or you ought to live like this, or you ought to look like this, or you ought to talk like this, or you shouldn't hang around this person. And all these expectations are right there on you. And in the middle of that, God is saying, hey, there's freedom here. I offer you a life of freedom. And we're standing there saying, but is freedom really freedom? Because that person's going to be mad at me. That person's not going to like me. That person wants me to do this. So, and we tie ourselves, instead of living in freedom, we tie ourselves to other people constantly. And we're bound by them when God says, just shake it loose.
Yeah.
God can spread a table in the wilderness. In the middle of accusations, when people are coming against you and saying you're good for nothing, nothing ever is going to happen with you. God can spread a table of abundant blessing goodness and mercy will follow you all the days of your life. Third thing that David did, it says in verse 20 that after this celebration out in the street in his underwear, that he went home. Because at the end of that celebration, he gave out gifts to everybody in the crowd. He was the king. He could do this. He said, let's open up the treasure. Let's give everybody gifts to take home. And everybody in the street that was celebrating with him got gifts to take home. And then it says, then he went home to bless his own family. It says that in verse 20, David returned home to bless his household. And that's when his wife came out to meet him and got all sarcastic up in his face. Well, weren't you fancy smancy out in the street today in your underwear? But this is the thing. David, the king of the country, went home to bless his household. By the way, if you haven't noticed, celebrity status might be something out here, but you get home, you leave celebrity at the door. Because ain't nobody, everybody knows you in this house. Everybody knows who you are. Everybody knows your stuff. You're just one of us.
Nobody got time for that?
Ain't nobody got time. You know. Now, I guess not everybody gets the royal treatment when they get home like I do. Steaming hot meal and the foot massage and the pillow and the blanket if I'm cold. And... Oh wait, no, that was my other life. Yeah, I dreamed that last night. There's a ticket. It's funny. By the way, speaking, I felt kind of like a celebrity yesterday because I went to speak at this conference. I mean, on a very, very, very small scale. But I went to speak to this conference. There was about 30 people there. And at the end of it, I was talking to this couple that had driven up from Aiken. I'd never met them before, didn't know who they were. And I talked to them for a while after the conference, and when they got ready to leave, the lady said, "It's really nice to meet you in person, finally." She said, "I watch your videos every week." I don't know how she even knows about our videos. I don't know how I have no clue. I didn't ask her any questions. But she said she watches it, and her husband says, "Yeah, I come home from work every night, and I'm tired and ready to eat something and rest for a while, and she wants me to watch these videos." Let's set them up, knock them down. So it is effective, by the way. The ministry that goes out from this place is reaching people we might not ever know about. But David's heart was where it should be. David's heart was to bless his family. I'm the king of the country, and I have a responsibility to lead them and to bless them, but I have a family. I have to come home, and I have to bless my family. And then when he walks in the doors, I mean, so that's another step for us, is to stay rooted where we're supposed to be. That'll keep you from having to listen to what everybody at work thinks you ought to be doing, or wherever. You have a family that matters. And when I tell you that you don't need to be living up to anybody's expectations, I'm going to put a little asterisk there and say, except your family. Because your family matters, and the way you relate to your family matters. The way that, especially in this case with David, with husband and wife, a couple should always be in agreement when it comes to things that matter. You can have different opinion on which team you like, because that don't matter. Don't tell Lee it doesn't matter. I don't know that David had to come home and scrub toilets or take out the trash or stuff like that. He was the king after all. But we do that. We have to do that kind of stuff, right? So stay rooted so that your expectations are where they should be, and you're not living up to somebody's expectation that just doesn't matter in your life. And the last thing, when his wife came to him and said, you're just a piece of work out there in the street in your drawers. And David's response to her was, this wasn't about you. This wasn't about me being the king. This didn't have anything to do with anything except my relationship with God. That God had given me this opportunity, and I believe that one of the reasons he gave me the opportunity to be king was so that I could restore back to his people true worship the way he wants it to be. And this was the beginning of that. He brought the ark back, he reestablished worship, and I don't know if you understand this, but David set up a tent with this Ark of the Covenant, and there was worship there 24/7. While David was king, all day, all night, every day, there were people there worshiping God. In the middle of Jerusalem, which was also called the city of David, in the middle of Jerusalem, there was this place where God was worshipped continuously, which was what God was asking from his people. Just let the praise come up. Let me have a place to have a relationship with you again, so that I'm the center of your life. So David said, this was all about my relationship with God. And this is a really interesting phrase that he said to her. He said, it was before the Lord that I danced, and I will celebrate before the Lord. I will become even more undignified than this. You think that was something? You think underwear was bad? Wait till it's gone. No, he might not have said that. But he said, I don't know how much more undignified you could get. But he said, I'll become even more undignified than this, even until I'm humiliated in my own eyes. Until there's no pride left. Until there's nothing between God and me. Everything between God and me is right. And everything that I'm experiencing in my relationship with him is what he wants to give to me. My relationship with God is right. I'm going to get to the place that there's no pride left, that I'm not worried about what you think. I'm not worried about what your dad would have thought. I'm not worried about what the people think. All I care about is that God is pleased with my worship. You know, there's a scripture in Philippians chapter 2 that tells us about Jesus and the way he approached his life here when he was on earth. And it says that one of the phrases that it uses to describe him is this. It says, he made of himself no reputation. Now, you know, our reputation is pretty important to us. And in many instances, for very good reason. It'd be hard to do business if you had a bad reputation in business world, right? But when it comes to our relationship with God and the way we choose to make decisions, what am I going to do? What is my purpose in life? Am I going to listen to God's plan, or am I going to listen to the plans of man for me? When it comes to those decisions, I don't have a reputation at stake. What's at stake is the will of God in my life. And this says in Philippians chapter 2 that Jesus, it says this, let this same way of thinking, let this mind be in you that was also in Christ Jesus, who, being in the form of God, didn't consider it robbery to be equal with God, but in spite of that, he made himself of no reputation and took upon him the form of a servant and was made in the likeness of men. And being found in fashion as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient unto death, even death on a cross. Jesus never would have gotten to the cross at Calvary apart from that kind of humility, to where I'm God, you sin, you die. I mean, this is if Tony were God. If that's ever on the ballot, don't vote for it. I don't recommend Tony as God in any circumstance. But if it were ever, if you change your mind and all of you vote me in, it would be, okay, you sin, you die, because I'm not dying for you. Like Lisa said to us this morning, I don't think I could go through that. I don't think I would be willing to go through that for anybody. But Jesus himself, though he was God, he didn't consider any reputation high enough. You really have to grasp this. He didn't consider any reputation high enough that he wouldn't lay it down for you. Because he loved you. Because he had a plan for you. His plan was to have a relationship with you. He wants to know you. He wants your life to be better than it's been. He wants you to live a life that's full and free. Free from all that stuff that everybody's piling up on you. Free from the things that people say you have to do. You gotta, if you're going to be a Christian, you got to stop that. If you're going to be a Christian, you got to start that. You know, there are 3 scriptures. You know, when a phrase is repeated in the Bible several times, I think we should probably pay attention to it. This was found in Joel chapter 2, Acts chapter 2, and Romans chapter 10. And it says this: whosoever shall call on the name of the Lord shall be saved. It's not lay this down and pick this up and then call on Jesus. It's not clean up your act. Get over here in somebody's group so that they can get you up to a high enough level that you're worthy to be a Christian. No, it's really simple. Whosoever calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved. In fact, Jesus said this when Nicodemus came to him at night and he says, how can I get into the kingdom? I believe in you. I want to be part of what you're doing. How do I get in? And Jesus says, you got to be born again. Now you think about it. Amber has a new nephew, Brayden, just born yesterday. How much work did he have to do to be born? What did he have to do to be born? Nothing. The baby had nothing to do with it. Now, Mama had to do a whole lot, and it took a long time and some hard work. Well, if we're going to draw a parallel here to being born again, Jesus has already done the hard stuff.
Yes.
Jesus went to the cross so that you can be born again. And there's nothing for you to do except come out the birth canal. All you have to do is say, here I am, world. We'll smack you on the butt and say, welcome. Okay, we won't. That's the new way we get people into the kingdom, a transformation house.
Instead of a baptismal service, we'll have a spank service.
Hey, that might be an improvement.
Spank them in the kingdom.
I've always wanted to have a smacking line. A spanking line that works too. Sorry, I told you don't vote for me for God. Do you remember your yearbooks? Do you remember when you would get a yearbook from high school? And do you remember what you would do? I know what some of you did. You'd go to the index and you'd look up your name. Find out how many times you were in the yearbook. Once! And I missed your high school. One time, surely not. So then you have to look through all the pages and find the ones that didn't get marked. So you write your number in the back of the book. This is all the pages I'm on. You know, there's a crowd in the pep rally or whatever, and you're a little dot, but that's me. I'm on this page. And we think that the yearbook is all about us feeling better about it. You know, that this is me. This is my identity. This is who I am. And I can find some approval if I'm in there lots of times. Jesus has given us a yearbook. As we come to him, he writes our names in the book. And when you look through it, you want to see your picture to find approval. Look, I gave an offering. Aren't you happy? Look, I gave somebody an invitation to an Easter service. 3 points, right? But when you look through God's yearbook, you know what you find? There's not a picture of you in there. Every page is a picture of Jesus. There he is again. Jesus, 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 Jesus. Because you don't have an identity apart from him. When you look in God's plan for your life, you see Jesus over and over. It's Jesus, Jesus. And when you're apart from him, when you're not living free with him, and you're bent somewhere else toward somebody else or toward yourself, you're not living in that in what he has for you. You're apart from him. You have turned away from his plan for you, and you've turned in some other direction. So when your picture shows up in the yearbook, you know that's not the good thing. That's supposed to be Jesus. I'm supposed to be glorifying God through this act. My offering is supposed to be something that honors Him. My acts of worship is supposed to honor Him. Even my invitation to somebody else to come be part of this cool church down in the basement, that's supposed to be to honor Him. It's not about to make the pastor happy. It's not to fill up the chairs. It's to honor Jesus. To say, Jesus, I believe that when you humbled yourself and you became obedient to death on a cross for me, that meant something. I want to do something in my life that says, I'm grateful. I want to live my life in a way that says, thank you, Jesus, for paying a price for me to have a relationship with you so that I can let go of all these other things that I've been tied to. I'm tired of that life. I want my life to count. I want my life to honor you. I want my life to be about you, not about, oh my goodness. Just look at your own life. How bent are you? How bent over are you? Are you always relying on somebody else's opinion? Always trying to please somebody else? Always trying to get somebody else's approval? Or are you already so far past that you can't even live your life, you can't even breathe? Because it's so suffocating to try to please everybody around you, and there's no life left. It's really easy. It's really easy to overcome this giant of everybody else's approval. All you have to do is stand up. If you're bent toward anybody, if you're bent into yourself, all you have to do is stand up. Because Jesus is there. He's never moved. He's never changed. His plan has never changed for you. It's still the same. All you have to do is stand up and say, Jesus, here I am. Can we just say that to Him this morning? If you're tired of living your life based on what other people think, or if you feel like you can't breathe, or you feel like, I'm good, I'm standing, but I feel this inclination, how we are, like a blade of grass in the breeze, or easily bent here and there. And Jesus says, just stand. Just stand. Just say, Jesus, I'm coming to receive the gift that you have for me, and that gift is freedom. That gift is life. It's just not hard. It's just not hard.